Hi, my name is Sydney Shead, and my majors are history and ethnic studies. And the title of my thesis is Granny Midwife to Nurse Midwife, the Decline of Southern Black Midwifery in the 20th Century. So for my research project, I really studied and researched Black midwifery in the US. Firstly, I analyzed the ways that Black women have served as midwives since the 17th century during slavery. And then I analyzed how Black midwives were really excluded from the field of midwifery in the 20th century. So I was really interested in finding out what made it so that Black women who used to dominate the field of midwifery are now the minority in the midwifery field. The term granny midwife, refers to Black lay midwives without formal training. Most of the midwives in the South, in the rural South specifically, did not have any form of standardized training or education, and they had really learned how to deliver babies from their mothers, their grandmothers, other family members, friends, their community, and they had not attended any sort of program to learn their trade. The midwifery field was dominated by Black women in the rural South prior to the 20th century. So among white and Black communities, midwives were commonly hired to deliver babies. But it's important to note that at the turn of the 20th century, there came to be the midwife problem, which was really this rising concern over the legitimacy and the safety of midwives. Many physicians pushed the narrative that midwives were unsafe, dangerous, and could result in infant or maternal mortality because they wanted to be hired and respected as childbirth attendees. And so we kind of see midwifery begin to decline in the 20th century due to the midwife problem. However, it is really important to note that Black midwifery in the rural South survived longer than midwifery did in the rest of the United States because of the rural South and the culture of the rural South at this time. So in the 20th century, when midwifery is beginning to decline across the United States, the rural South was seeing a different situation because there were not many physicians available in the rural South. Many Black women and white women as well lived too far away from a physician to even make it feasible to call one during childbirth, especially when one was going into labor unexpectedly. There was also a higher population of poor patients in the rural South who were unable to really hire and pay a physician or give birth in a hospital. Granny midwives were much cheaper than white male physicians. They oftentimes also accepted informal payments such as food or chickens or clothing instead of asking for money. And so it really made it more financially feasible for many patients at this time to hire midwives instead of physicians. The culture of granny, so within the South and within Black communities specifically, there was a lot of respect for granny midwives. They were trusted in their communities. Many patients felt comfortable with these women. They were oftentimes community members that knew the patients that they were seeing. And so many patients just preferred to hire midwives in general, even if they could financially hire a physician. Additionally, many women, specifically Black patients in the South, did not want to hire a white male physician or give birth in a hospital because of the racism that they did experience within the healthcare field. So granny midwives and Black midwifery overall in the South survived much longer than midwifery did in the rest of the United States, kind of because of this unique culture in the South at this time. However, Black midwifery did still decrease in the 20th century, and by the 1970s, lay midwifery was illegal, and there was no new lay midwives were beginning to practice, even in the South. And so I really analyzed that, and the results that I found was that Black midwives faced increasing regulation and exclusion due to the professionalization of both white and Black medical communities, racism and sexism within the medical and social spheres, and the creation of the nurse midwife. So as the white medical community and white male obstetricians really wanted to legitimize their field, that really motivated them to push Black women out of the field so that they could be more well-respected and paid more for their time. The Black medical community at this time also wanted to gain respect and legitimacy, and they really sought the approval of the white medical community. And so many Black doctors began to also put down Black midwives so that the Black medical community was seen as standardized and as progressive and up to date. And so Black midwives really lost the support of the Black medical community and Black physicians specifically during the 20th century. Many Black women faced racism and sexism within both the medical field, but also within the general public. First, it started with many white patients stopping hiring Black midwives and starting to hire white physicians only. And eventually, once the creation of the nurse midwife happened, many Black women were really unable to enter into this new field. And so not only did midwifery decline, but the only women who were really able to enter into the nurse midwifery field were white women. I use the methods of history and ethnic studies to really analyze my research project. I used a historical perspective to analyze the sequence of events and the context that led to the exclusion of Black women from the field of midwifery. I also used an ethnic studies perspective to examine how the intersectionality of race, poverty, and gender contributed to discrimination against Black midwives. Because most midwives in the South were Black, it's really important to acknowledge the racism that was used to push them out of the field in the 20th century. Today, only 6.7% of nurse midwives are Black women. And so the events of the 20th century are still felt today. And so it's very important to acknowledge and recognize what happened during this time. Thank you very much for your time.